All right, everybody, ready to start the very special Valentine's Day edition work session? Yes.
Let's
All
do
right,
it.
Let's do it. Okay. So today we're going to have an overview of Module 2 of the zoning code rewrite. And here's Andrea Tooney to get us going.
Good evening, Mr. President and commissioners. We are here today to talk about the zoning code rewrite and the progress that we have made. We have a new module or a new installment out, and we kind of wanted to give you a brief tutorial on what that module entails, how you can find that material, and how you or constituents can actually participate in our community outreach that will be that we will be participating in over the next couple of months. So on the agenda, we wanted to go ahead and talk to you a little bit about the zoning code rewrite schedule itself and when you can anticipate the third installment, as well as the consolidated plan and then the public hearing process. We'll also talk to you about some of the major changes that are proposed with the draft code, Module 2, and then we will go into the community engagement plan that we have for Module 2 as well. So as we look at the schedule, if you'll remember, we were back before you back in April, and we had the opportunity to tell you a little bit about Module 1. And in Module 1, we described the zoning districts that we were proposing, as well as those allowed uses within the use table. So we went through a number of months of public engagement with that. And now we have moved on to Module 2, or that second installment. The second installment is really the meat of the code, and it talks about those development and design standards on which create the look and feel of buildings and sites throughout the city. Once we get done with the second module, we'll move on to the Module 3, which is how developments get approved. So that's who reviews those applications, whether it's staff, the Design Review Committee, Historic Preservation Commission, the Planning and Zoning Commission, or City Council. It also talks about the time frame, as well as how the appeal process works, who can participate in the process, and when they participate. So just to give you an idea that at the end of January, we went ahead and released Module 2, and we will go ahead and continue through that neighborhood and city outreach through April 10th. And then from there, we're going to start on Module 3, and we will do some community outreach for that as well. So that'll take us through early summer. And then we will, by the time we get to fall, which would be October, we should have additional citywide outreach for a consolidated plan. So that'll enable us to take Module 1, 2, and 3 and put all of those items together. Make sure that we do continued education as well as outreach to our community to see where they are. And then we will begin the public hearing process where we have an opportunity to come before you for a formal recommendation before we go to our city council. So we are hoping for a final adoption in July of 2023, but we have a lot of work to do in the meantime. So we want to tell you what we've been up to, some of those proposed changes, and then how we propose to communicate with the community. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Deanna Dupuy to get us kicked off.
Hello, commissioners. Good to see you. As Andrea said, I'm going to go through some of the proposed changes for Module 2. If you had the opportunity to look at the document, it's huge. It's the zoning code. And so this is not all of the changes that you'll find in Module 2, but it's what we kind of see as some of the largest changes and how we're communicating them to our community. So our first change is an update to our dimensional requirements, specifically around minimum lot size. So if you do go to the dimensional table, you'll see reductions in almost all residential zones for minimum lot size. This example is showing the R1C zone district. So currently our minimum lot size is 5,000, and our recommendation is for that to go down to 4,000, with also decreased recommendations for lot width. We have some reasons here for that change. And I'm not going to go through every single reason, but we truly believe that smaller lot sizes have the potential to increase housing type products, as well as creating more diverse neighborhoods and reducing sprawl. The next dimensional update to our dimensional standards is we're actually removing the density calculation for residential, or actually all zones. So no longer of using the calculation of max units per acre. We're removing that requirement and instead are going to be focusing on objective criteria such as minimum parking, setbacks, minimum lot size, and maximum height, and seeing, let's build the building that way so that we can more accurately measure impact of a new development. So this is a good example of the images. The buildings are exactly the same form, but under a zoning code that limits units per acre, it may artificially limit the number of apartments or units that could be inside that building. And instead, if there's enough room to meet the parking requirements, setbacks, et cetera, you could have 2 more units in that. But on the flip side, we wanted to make sure that as we are removing density requirements, we're providing some predictability to our residents about protecting existing neighborhoods, especially with creating transition zones between a more intense property use like apartments or commercial and its transition to a single family residential. So adding several different protection standards like what's shown here on the images is either a extended amount of 35-foot requirement, or you could just add extra 10 feet extra setback to be able to build taller. There's other requirements like lighting requirements, screening, landscaping, just above and beyond our traditional as it makes that transition. We also recognize, and this has been a priority of the city, is that we want to encourage sustainable and resilient development, recognizing that it's expensive. We want to provide incentives. And this is really creating a parking reduction in exchange for energy or water saving improvements. This one is an exciting one for our community on all sides. We are proposing that we would only require 1 off-street parking spot for a single family, duplex, triplex, and fourplex. And that's different because we do currently require 2 off-street sites. Additionally, another change will be that right now we have our citywide design guidelines and downtown design standards and guidelines. And what our recommendation is to actually move this into our code and broaden the applicability to all parcels within the city. We're also creating a new chapter in the code, or a new section, which is to promote access and connectivity. We know that there are many best practices in site design that enable more efficient and safe circulation around a property. So pulling those out to make them clear that this is a priority for us and that this is what's required for safe and efficient site design. And our last change is another new section to our code, which is ensuring maintenance of conditions of approval, even after, for the lifetime of a project. So holding, the developers accountable to not only meet the condition for occupancy, but that they have some requirements after that. So those are the 8 changes that we're walking through our community with. And I'm going to let Lindsay cover actually how we're conducting that engagement.
Good evening, commissioners. I would now like to present the community engagement plan for Module 2 of the zoning code rewrite. We learned from Module 1 that it's important for us to focus on the quality of the conversations with the community. And if that means taking our time to come up with a strategic community engagement plan, then we should do so. Zoning is a technical and confusing topic and can be difficult to understand. So we need to break down the zoning code and find ways to have meaningful and personal conversations with Boiseans. In anticipation of the release of Module 2, we put together a couple different documents for you all as well as the community that's public on our website. The first one is how to read Module 2. Picking up a 400-page document we know is not necessarily realistic for all Boiseans, but we tried to put a document together that helps guide people of where they might find things that interest them, such as lot and building forms, maybe parking and loading, and those off-street parking standards. We provide a couple helpful tips and then also a nice reference guide. We use a lot of dimensions throughout the document, and not everybody can think of what 10 feet might mean. So we try to keep it Idaho focused. When you think of, or when you see 5 feet, maybe think of a mountain bike. When you see 20 feet, maybe think the length of a whitewater raft. The second document we put together was the executive summary that covered the 8 major changes that Deanna just went over. This kind of gives us a little bit of history of where we've been, where we are now, and why we propose some of these changes, giving some background to each of these. The third is a conversion map, which Deanna put together, which is a really cool interactive map that you can zoom in and out. You can type in your address, you can click on a parcel, and you'll be able to see the proposed zone as well as the new zone. And that comes with a legend as well. We started our community outreach efforts last week. We've hosted a couple already. We thought it was important to head out to each of the planning areas and give specific examples of what this might mean for their neighborhood. So we went to the Central Bench just last week and gave a couple examples I'll get to in just a minute, as we worked with a local architect to kind of put the whole picture together to see what these changes look like. In addition to all these outward facing events, we also have had several events already with more technical users, with ULI, American Institute of Architects. We have Compass coming up and several others as well. These are just the public facing ones for now. Another portion that we really wanted to try and focus on for Module 2 is really connecting the why. We have all these amazing action plans and housing needs analysis, climate action roadmap, and trying to tie the whole picture together with the zoning code rewrite. As I mentioned, we are providing each of the neighborhoods with an example that they might recognize in their own neighborhood. So we're giving one commercial and one residential example, and then providing call outs for some of the proposed changes, whether that's streetscape, whether that's street trees, building height, setbacks, etc. We'll also have a survey available starting February 24th to April 10th. We'll have 2 of those. One will be a technical user survey, people that use the code on a more regular basis. And then we took that survey and broke it down to more community-focused language. And that one is also translated to Spanish. Again, that will be out in the community on the 24th of February. And that is it for us for now. We have a couple upcoming engagement opportunities. We'd love for you to join us on any of these as well. It's really enlightening kind of listening to what the community has to say. As we pointed out, we've already heard lots of colorful commentary on a couple of these topics. And with that, we'll take any questions you guys might have.
Great. Thanks, team. I see Mr. Gillespie's got his hand up. We'll start with Commissioner Gillespie.
Hey, Bob, can you see me?
We can. Howdy, Milt.
I'm good. How are you? And congratulations. I'm sorry I missed your coronation last meeting.
Well, thank you. It's nice to see you as well.
I'm working on your new cutout crown.
I love it.
But in all seriousness, you know, it's not always an easy job, and I appreciate you volunteering to do it. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Schafer, I have a couple of questions for the city about what we've just heard with your approval.
You got it. Go for it, please.
So I'm sorry, city folks, I couldn't quite catch all those names. Just my first reaction is it looks terrific and I'm very excited. I think the general direction is really, really good. My second question is, as you may know, we've recently had a very exciting set of meetings related to a certain use up on State Street. And I note in the code that we have 3 pages of specific requirements for adult entertainment locations. We have pages on pubs. We have specific, 2 or 3 code specific pages on cell phone towers or telecommunications towers, but we don't have any code specific language on how folks who don't have a home and how we try and help them. Where would that fit in this module 1, 2, or 3 breakup of the new zoning code? If we were going to write some specific language around that use.
Commission President Schafer, Commissioner Gillespie. So we originally reviewed that as part of module 1, but the really important piece to this is that we move through, these are draft documents.
Sure.
So we're taking input all the way through the process, and then we'll take additional input once we've made amendments with the consolidated plan. So I would encourage you to do that. So there is in module 1, there is an allowance for housing shelters. And then there are actually some conditions elsewhere that our consultant has recommended. We know that those recommendations could be very, very difficult when applied. So
Sure.
we'd like to revisit that, and not only revisit that, but actually looking at how we can mitigate some of those uses and really integrate them into our neighborhood so they become a holistic neighborhood rather than what they are now.
Right. I appreciate that. And I'm sorry, I think I missed the module 1 briefing and I haven't done my homework. So I'll go back and take a look at that because I definitely have some ideas on how the city could help folks like us in that decision making. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll defer to whatever Chris wants to ask.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Mel. Commissioner Blanchard, did you have a question?
Mr. Chair, yes, I do. Andrea or anybody else from city staff, you showed a couple of maps that we might have access to. Is that correct?
Commission President Schafer and Commissioner Blanchard. Yes, so those are what we call the zoning conversion map. So if you go to zoning code rewrite on the city's page, it'll take you to an interactive story map, and it will allow you to maneuver through. Those maps are tied together so you can scroll in, scroll out, or even go directly to a parcel. If you click on that parcel, it will tell you what the current zone is, what the proposed zoning district will be, and it'll also identify if there's any overlay districts or anything else that would be applicable to that parcel.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrea. Appreciate that.
Mr. Chair.
Jennifer, yes, sorry. I was looking at the screen and please.
So about I think Milt or Commissioner Gillespie kind of alluded to it, to kind of some of the specific uses, and maybe this was in module 1 as well. But a couple of topics that I kind of have in the back of my mind are things like flex space, and then student housing, specifically kind of some of that housing around, or some of these apartment projects around the university that come across in that neighborhood. Are there any additional sections or conditions of approval applied to housing types or project types like those?
Commission President and Commissioner Moore, we have taken a look at all of the housing types. We have heard from some neighborhoods that they would like to have more extensive definitions regarding some types of student housing. But ultimately, at this point in time, we have tried to consolidate the housing definitions to make it a more simple and more organized document. Now, that doesn't mean that that's the end all be all. So, if you have any recommendations for us, we would love for you to provide those. I mean, you guys are the experts. You guys deal with this on a day-to-day basis above and beyond what we do as staff. So any criteria that you might recommend would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Got Commissioner Stead online with some questions, I think.
Hi, staff, really great job. This is awesome to see, and I look forward to learning it all and seeing more of it. So I understand, excuse me, I know that this is a proposal until it's adopted, but I was curious, what kind of public feedback are you looking for? Is the proposal still morphing through these topics, phase or module 1 and 2, or are they already, pretty set as far as the proposal goes?
Commission President Schafer, Commissioner Stead, This is certainly an evolving document and an evolving process. So we are welcoming all feedback to modules 1, 2, 3, and then the consolidated plan. So I would expect to see that the document will continually to evolve until formal adoption. And, even at that point, I would not be surprised to see the council make some minor amendments to the document at that time. So this is definitely not a solidified document. It's an evolving one that we're actually welcoming change.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mooney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, Andrew, you might be able to answer this, or maybe Deanna. My question is about the specific plans, particularly SBO3, Seringa Valley. The way I understand it is what we're doing here with the zoning code rewrite won't affect any of the specific plans. And they've obviously, since they're newer than the code, would feasibly have some better best practice approaches to zoning and all the issues that you're dealing with. So I guess what I'm concerned about, or maybe you can answer, the workaround for this, is it what's going to happen here? Is SPO3 going to be behind the code because we don't have time to go in and crack open SPO3 while we're doing this, the big code rewrite?
Commission President Schafer, Commissioner Mooney, actually the specific plans were all adopted, so they will remain as they were proposed. So SPO 1, 2, and 3 will all remain. I would say that those have all been recently developed, and so they have a lot of our modern best practices. I don't imagine that they'll be too far behind. And our goal is that we actually have really innovative, cutting edge solutions. So you might see the City of Boise code be a little ahead of the game, which that would be my preference. But I think you're going to see a lot of similarities as we move forward.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, that was my thought, is that the rewrite's going to be ahead of the specific plans, and there are problems with the specific plans, and yeah, they're newer, but I'm glad there's a recognition of that. But I'm sensitive to the fact that the staff is strapped, and cracking open a specific plan after you've done all this work is going to be tough.
Okay. Any other questions, team? Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you all for the update. I can't believe it's been almost a year since we saw you last on this very topic. That's kind of amazing. So nice work. Appreciate the update. No real questions from me. The one thing that really stuck, Deanna, with your presentation was the ensuring maintenance on projects. I think that's a really good move. I mean, there's a lot of good things happening with this plan, but I think that's a great move, that it's not just projects should be based on what's just built, but how are they maintained in perpetuity? So I think that's a really nice addition in addition to everything else you guys are doing. So well done.
Thank you so much for your time.
Bet. We'll see you guys in a few more months, I guess.
Great. Well, before we release to a break, we can go over just the one item. We're going to hear a request for deferral, but there may be some people who need to testify. So
okay,
keeping that in mind.
Sounds good. And they're going to defer to March 14th, correct, Krista?
Correct.
Okay, sounds good.
Great. All right. Good evening and welcome to the Boise City Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing. A few things to start out with for tonight's proceedings. Everyone from the public entering the hearing virtually has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you'll be called upon and unmuted. There is a chat function in Zoom. This is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. Our procedures for public hearings begin with the presentation from the planning team. Then we'll go to the application and then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to public testimony, starting with those who are in person, then who signed up on the sign-up sheet in advance, and then anyone else who raises their hand virtually. If you're attending through your telephone, you can type in *9 to raise your hand. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with this time as it is limited by code. And finally, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. Mr. Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, Crystal. Good evening. We are citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. We make final decisions on conditional use permits, variances, and appeals, and recommendations to the city council on subdivisions, rezones, annexations, and code or comprehensive plan amendments. Any decision made tonight may be appealed to the city council, provided that the appeal is filed within 10 days of this hearing. In order to file an appeal, you must have given written or oral testimony at tonight's meeting. So that's why it is important to give your name and address when you testify tonight. We utilize a consent agenda. This means that if the applicant agrees with the staff report and there is no public opposition, that item will be placed on the consent agenda. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved with one motion without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order just detailed a few minutes ago with staff, applicant, neighborhood association, and then the public testimony. Thank you all for attending tonight. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Stead,
Here.
Schafer,
Here.
Squires,
Here.
Blanchard,
Here.
Moore,
Here.
Gillespie,
Here.
Finfrock,
Here.
Danley,
Go Rams. I mean, here.
Mooney,
Here.
all present.
Okay, thank you. All right, short agenda this evening, only one item. And that one item, the applicant is requesting a deferral to March 14th. That item is CAR 21-37. It is the city of Boise at 5121 West Gowan Road. It's a rezone of 153 acres from A1 to A2. Again, the applicant is requesting deferral to March 14th. Is there anyone in attendance this evening that would like to, that cannot attend the March 14th hearing and would like to testify this evening? Please keep in mind that if you testify this evening, that is your one opportunity to testify, and you cannot testify again on March 14th. We only have one person in attendance here in chambers. We have a few folks online. I see no hands raised online regarding testifying tonight. So with that, I will entertain a motion to defer.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Stead.
I move that we defer CAR 21-37 to March 14th.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to defer. Any discussion? Very good. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Stead,
Aye.
Schafer,
Aye.
Squires,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Aye.
Finfrock,
Aye.
Danley,
I
Mooney.
Aye.
Was that an aye?
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay, very good. Well, that does it for our agenda this evening. Everybody have a fine Valentine's Day holiday, and we are adjourned.